What's the deal?
What's the deal? What?
What's the deal?
The deal.
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal? What is the deal?
Hey, what's the deal?
What's good, everybody? I'm Steve Discourse.
It's your girl, Jay Callie.
And we're back with episode 8. Where are we going to start today?
Listen, y'all, your nasty ass fave is finally going down. And, you know, it's a stretch to even call it your fave because I know y'all are lying. There is a disgusting soda / water / what is it called LaCroix. Bougie people call it LaCroix. I don't care. It's not good. And for the last year of my life, this soda is everywhere. For the past few years, I'm seeing it. Everyone's talking about how nasty it is. LaCroix tastes like the drink when someone just says strawberry at the moment that you sipped water. And it's kind of.
Those were my favorite memes like a month or two ago. And my favorite one was LaCroix tastes like Sprite with a condom.
No, that's a really good one. It just tastes like
that
bland,
took me all the way out.
hot, cold, sharp, bubbly water with a little bit of what is it. I don't like it. No one likes it. But for the past few months, everywhere I go, there's someone sipping LaCroix. I go to work to the snack when everyone's bringing in snacks and everyone's bringing in LaCroix. I'm like, you don't like it. Why are you forcing the rest of us to drink it? Stop pretending like you like this drink. Anyway. I'm happy to announce that hopefully its demise is upon us because they have been discovered to use roach insecticide. Is that what it's called?
Insecticide.
Insecticide in their soda. Of course, they're denying it and saying LaCroix only uses natural ingredients. But someone tested it and they discovered that they have some artificial ingredients and one of them is roach insecticide. And I'm like, yes! I mean, I'm sorry to anyone who ever drank it, but finally, I don't have to look at you all pretend that you're drinking this drink because you enjoy it because you want people to fancy and upper class. You're regular. Drink Sprite. Go down, LaCroix.
So, scandalous for sure. But I'm curious how the lawsuit is going to go because what a lot of people don't realize is when you hear things like no artificial flavors or sweeteners or all natural, those aren't common sense words and defenitions.
No, there's a lot of heavy.
They're political and they're industrial. And the FDA, Marion Nestle, no relation to the candy and chocolate. Marion Nestle is like a major figurehead in food policy and health and nutrition, public health. And she writes a lot on stuff like this. And she has a book called Safe Food, which goes into all the politics of how safety guidelines and regulations come about from the FDA and USDA and all these oversight organizations. And I can't remember. I read this book many years ago, so I don't remember exactly. But I can tell you, if it says all natural or 100% natural or something, that doesn't mean what you think it means. Like they just crushed up some raspberries and put it in. There can be laboratory created things in there. Like if it tastes like apple, that doesn't mean they put apples in it. They can make a chemical that tastes like apples and it's still 100% all natural or whatever like that. So don't fall for that. You see that's all marketing ploys, those kind of words. So if you see those on labels, don't think you're necessarily getting healthy stuff. Don't necessarily think you know what you're getting. You got to check those ingredient labels and everything, right? Because how they come to this is a matter of life and death for companies. So they're over there pressing on these agencies to be like, nah, you got to let this go, right? We need this leeway, right? And we need the slack in these things. So these definitions don't necessarily mean what you and I on the street would think they mean. And I mean, that's how they get by on us,
No, that's literally exactly what they do. They say, oh, well, the FDA says that we can use this label because X, Y, Z. They don't care about you and what you want to put into your body. They care about, can we legally say that this ingredient is natural, air quotes? Right. Sure, yeah, you can say it's natural, even though it's all fake BS that we use to kill roaches.
Right.
Because technically some of that stuff came from the earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll depend on what the lawsuit is. If the lawsuit is because it's advertised as natural and they say it's not,
Yeah,
it might
there's
just
a
not
huge
hold up by
loophole.
legal definition.
Right.
Now, if their lawsuit is like, bruh, you putting insecticide in here and that the basis is in some other realm of like legal argumentation, then that might really be it. But
Yeah.
I don't know either way if this doesn't qualify as all natural and so they'd be guilty. But either way, it's super questionable.
Well, they're not putting insecticide in it. They're putting an ingredient in
from
it
it.
that's also used in insecticide.
And so
But
they might get off scot-free.
they might get off scot-free. Either way, people, stop drinking LaCroix and stop bringing it into my home because I don't want to drink it, and stop bringing it any place where anybody should drink it because no one wants to drink it. That's it.
Okay.
Drop
Okay.
Spike.
So, well, we will. We'll keep an eye on that with bated breath to see how that unfolds. Let's see. What else do we have here? Going right along. Amazon made a wild splash. People were celebrating in the streets at the news that they were going to pay all their workers in America at least $15 an hour, and similar large pay bumps were going to happen in other countries as well. That's pretty awesome. It's going to be a huge boost for people in certain areas of the country, smaller for other areas of the country. But
Go Amazon.
that was massive, right? Hey, props to the richest man in the world by far, Jeff
true.
Bezos. $148 billion this man has.
I need a sugar daddy. It's like, no.
He's listening to the podcast.
I know.
He's emailed
It was
us
an
with his
invitation.
support. But what was less reported this week is, surprise, surprise, they didn't make a big PR splash about this.
Aw.
In exchange for that pay raise, they're taking away all the other income benefits that they were giving those workers, related to stocks and profit sharing and things like that. So they, of course, say the monetary kind of value is offset by the pay raise, but like that's super shady. It's super shady. So if it's offset, how much, right? 51 to 49%? Like what are you really doing here? So like that was real suspect. And I was annoyed because some people were like, you had to know the other shoe would drop. And I was like, you know what? I didn't think there was another shoe to drop. I was like, wow, they're going to raise prices. I feel a little naive. And so we got played. And so I only say that just because I don't think it got as much play. And I know a lot of people were excited about that big announcement for the pay raise. But, I mean, this is how we get done. And keep in mind, Amazon, one of, if not the biggest or most valuable company in the world right now, Jeff Bezos, by far the most richest man in the 140 or 38 billion dollars. This guy is going to give you a $15 an hour pay raise, but take your
benefits. Oh my gosh, right. It's basically all of it.
Yeah, so it's just like, bro, where'd you get all that money from?
I'd rather have benefits.
That's extra, right? So your company is clearly doing all right if you're worth that much money. Break us off, right? And also some other things that are going to go away are some of the incentives for being productive in like some of the warehouses and things. So they are really, I mean, it was, I think, totally a PR stunt because they've been catching a lot of flack. Bernie Sanders submitted a bill called the Stop Bad Employers by Zeroing Out Subsidies bill, or the Stop Bezos Act.
Ooh.
Coincidence? So Amazon has been catching a lot of flack for some of the working conditions, some of the burdens, the workloads that they put on their employees who do deliveries and who work in the warehouses. And so I think this was a total way to try and like spin and PR in their favor. And then on the backside, when we're not really paying attention, some news outlets will cover it, but we're already out here, a lot of them celebrating the good news. And so, they know what they're doing. People who run these businesses are not stupid. And we just got to put that out there.
I wonder how the employees are reacting to it because obviously they know like, oh, we're getting a pay raise. Oh, we're losing our benefits. Like, I wonder if they'll make a big public stink about it and be like, before you celebrate or before you clap, you need to know the truth. Because at the end of the day, there's always somebody in the middle of these political scandals. And a lot of times we don't hear their voices.
Right. So we'll keep an eye on that, too, because I like to talk about workers and what they're doing, to get better working conditions, better pay, all that. So these kind of stories are always going to be on the radar. So obviously everybody knows this week We got the Kavanaugh confirmation.
Right.
We're recording on Saturday, so we're waiting the confirmation today, which is likely, right?
Yes. It's definitely going to be today.
Yeah. So they voted yesterday in the Judiciary Committee to end the debate segment about it. So technically, like, a lot of people are reporting that he's like being confirmed and people sold their people out and everything. But technically, any of these senators could come and vote no today.
Right. So they haven't actually confirmed his seat on the Supreme Court. What they did was say, are we even going to allow him to officially run for the seat? Because what was in question is he going to be able to run
put him there or not?
Right.
That's what they're going to vote for today. Is he in or not? So we can really probably just leave it there because we can talk about this next week.
Well, if
he gets in or not. I think the real story is if he doesn't get in, because I think all along it's been pretty much a lock, really.
You think so?
I'm pretty sure.
I think the opposite.
Because look, no new evidence came out when they testified, the two of them head to head. No new evidence came out. So wherever side you were on, you were probably going to stay on the side.
That's true.
Republicans had the power. Nothing came out to change that. The investigation for the FBI was limited, so they couldn't do nothing. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Prayers up, all that stuff. See what happens. So, all right, moving along real quick. We got to do a grocery list of police.
Hit it.
What do I call this? Misbehavior, corruption. I don't know. So, all right, we got a cop was in Nashville on vacation. He was drunk. He went to a wrong house, couldn't get in, kicked the door down, and then proceeded to threaten the woman who lived there that he could break all the bones in her neck.
Oh, my God.
And then called her a effing N-word.
What? For what?
Because he was drunk in the wrong house, clearly. She had a 17, like 17, and like a 12-year-old son, and they tried to play a buffer between them. Luckily, nothing really bad happened, but like, bruh, really?
What is this? What is all this cops going to the wrong house nonsense?
Michael Reynolds.
I don't get it.
If you live in Nashville, the officer's name is Michael Reynolds, so just throwing that out there. Number 2, we got a cop named Sherry Hall. She claimed a large, tall black man shot her, but dash cam footage showed she shot herself in the vest. And so she was found to be lying, got 15 years in prison. She turned down a 5-year plea deal because she was afraid of prison. And now she's going to be in that. So, okay, moving along. In Texas, Leonard Crouch, an officer, saw a car stopped in the road, found out it was a man having a heart attack, reached in the man's pocket, stole $2,000 out of $2,400 cash, and left.
Just straight up illegal.
His grandfather apparently was convicted, was a cop and was convicted of stealing stereos like 50 years ago. So this runs in the family. So again, we don't get into a long conversation about this because we could have a whole 2-hour-long podcast about these issues and what they mean and why they happen every week. And that's not what the podcast is about. But I could probably state another 5 or 10 more situations like this, but we just put that on your radar so you know what happens, so we don't forget what's going on. And that's a good segue to the next thing. Finally, iPhone has done something useful and valuable for the society.
Tell me about
instead
it,
of being
please.
a total drain,
You're such a hater.
being such like a iPhones. But they have this new technology out where it's a shortcut app, so you can set up steps where you say, Siri, do this, and you program it to know to open that app and do this thing. And so there's a guy, I didn't write down his name, but there was a man who wrote the code so that you could just say, Siri, I'm getting pulled over, and it will open up recording apps and discreetly record the interaction with police.
Oh, snap. Go Siri.
And so, like, yeah, well, go, Robertson, I think was his last name. Well, I'll be better prepared next week when I have stuff to talk about. And that's it. So I think that'll be useful for some people, even though we have body cam, dash cam, cell phone footage of everything, and people are still getting off scot-free on murder. Except, we didn't talk about this before the show, but how could we not talk about Officer Van Dyke from Chicago got the guilty verdict for killing Laquan McDonald 4 years ago. And that's amazing. That's a big win. 4 years is a long time for something like this to happen. And what did police spokesman say straight out of the gate?
I do not know.
The whole trial was a scam, a sham, a mockery of justice. They don't stop. Like, they don't stop to protect their own. They don't care what it is. You law and order. Well, here's law and order. Oh, now it's not? Really? So I don't even have anything to say about that either. Just they stop at nothing. I talked about on an episode last week, maybe, about the cop who hit the little girl in the school zone.
Oh, yeah, you did talk about it.
And they came straight out the bat and said, oh, it was the girl's fault. Well, it's like an 8-year-old girl. Right. Why are you blaming her? Like, even if it was her fault, take the L, understand, like, that's a bad look for you, but you got to come out and now smear little girls? No. See, so these cops need to be stopped at all costs, because they don't care about anything but themselves to the detriment of anybody else around them, and that's wild. So that was a lot.
It was a lot.
Is there anything else on the list?
No.
For now? Okay, so let's take a quick break before we get into the next segment of our show. We've got an amazing panel of guests, and there's a lot to get into, so we'll be right back. Okay, so listeners of the show know that we've talked about in the past issues around the school to prison pipeline. We talk about criminal justice, social justice to different extents and different angles. And so with that said, I'm happy to bring some guests in the studio who can really speak to this on an expert level, with depth and range of experience and expertise that I can't touch on by any means. You got, Jay Callie, a little bit of training regarding what they're going to get into. So we're going to have a great conversation here. And I'm going to start first by introducing my good brother from Seattle, Jason Clark, in the building. Give the people a little bit of a sense of what you do right now. What's your role and your job title, things like that?
What up, though, Steve? It's been a minute, man. Jason Clark. My job title is Equity and Justice Advocate. I work for King County Superior Court. And the piece that we do with this project is called Credible Messenger. Since we're in D.C., I want to shout out and give some respect to DYRS, who's really holding it down in this area with their Credible Messenger program. We've been able to, partner with them, get trained, learn about the program, what goes in it, how we develop those people within it, and we've been able to implement one locally. So when you think about Credible Messenger, we're really focused on, supporting those leaders from various communities, making sure that we're geographically responsive to meet the needs of young people, focused on, cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, restorative principles, but just having fun, allowing kids opportunities to be kids, allowing kids opportunities to have some sort of innovation, but seeing themselves in their mentors. And I think that's one of the unique components of the program that we do. We give them the opportunity to work with leaders from their community who they'll be able to see after the work day is over, after the school day is over. It's not just that 9-to-5 piece. It's an assignment. It's a calling. So the mentorship that's provided, these are the cats that are going to run into these young people at the grocery store. You know what I mean? So that accountability is in there. We're really focused on just what it looks like for success for young people, if that's tying them to school or helping them achieve a goal.
Okay. But you also have, you have a pretty wide scope. You're involved with policy level things, implementing programs and procedures on the county level. Yep. So real quick, just give a rundown of some of those things. Man, as well.
It's a blessing when you think about it, like the role that I do have. Thinking about these policy shifts, I get to work on specifics like jury management systems. Right now I'm doing an equity impact review for our jury management systems. That incorporates the way that we train people, that incorporates the way that we focus on recording information and then sending out invites. One of these super nerdy cats that works in a different department hit me one day and he was like, man, I think, what, right? Yeah. He was like, I think there's an algorithm that's kind of biased and, we're getting these jurors that don't look like the people who are in court. And it was a year and a half ago and I saved that email, but to think about it now, like we've been pushing through the King County Interbranch team that's focused on equity and social justice to actually be able to address these issues. So when you think about that, like, that's huge. I guess the next things are, grant making. We do a lot of different grant making that ties into the type of projects that we're working on. Stopping the school to prison pipeline, that's one of them, and I think it's a huge issue to address. Unfortunately, we don't have the money that we need to really tackle the issue, but I think through programs like this, we really get to have an opportunity to chip away at that, move the needle a little bit. You know what I mean?
Okay.
The other pieces, I guess I would say, are most important is our courts. So the last piece I'll share is training. I get to train judges and all superior court staff on racial equity.
What?
You know what I mean? Like, I've dreamed of this since a little boy.
That's probably something is never even thought. That's never come across my mind that judges get any training and feedback. That's okay. So that's a lot. And that's important. I wanted to set that up, the range that you have and where people are working and the influences. So let's bring everybody else in. I got my man Willie Jimerson. William Jimerson was good.
Yes.
And I got Eddie Howard in here. So real quick, tell the people your piece, what your role is, what you're focused on, what your expertise is. Either way, who's want to start? All right, Eddie.
What's good? Eddie Howard. So I work at Urban League as a instructor teaching life skills and job skills to men and women that's transitioning from one of our local jails, Kent Regional Justice Center, through a program called Leap to Win, Leap standing for Lincoln Education Activities Pre-Release. In addition to that, through the Credible Messenger model, trainer and coach and facilitator for that model, and just started my organization called Progress Pushers. So it's up under the Credible Messenger model as well. We're going to be going inside the JRA, the juvenile prisons, doing this work, youth mentorship.
Okay. Yeah. What do you got, Willie J?
Yeah, my name is Will Jimerson. I'm also from Seattle, Washington, and it's definitely a delight to be able to work beside these brothers, Jason Clark and Eddie Howard, and other credible messengers that are a part of the King County Credible Messenger Initiative. In my specific role, I'm also a program manager at the Urban League, working alongside Eddie Howard in that particular capacity. I work with young folks between the ages of 12 and 24 who are just as involved, who have been impacted negatively by the system, or who have been shut out of educational opportunities and access to educational opportunities, gang involved themselves, or had close family members who've been gang involved or been incarcerated. And what we do is we provide a set of necessary resources and services, and most importantly, relationships, because resources and services are okay, right? You can get some resources and services to a homeless person. We can get a soup line going on, but if we don't develop relationships and offer them a space at the table instead of them being on the menu that's on the table, then what we're doing is we're changing different outcomes. And so we have a particular transformational process underneath the Credible Messenger Initiative that I manage. It's called GROOM. GROOM stands for Gifted Regardless of Oppressive Methods. And we want these young folks to understand that they are gifted regardless of the oppressive methods that they came into contact with, whether it's their schools, whether it may be their families, whether it may be the educational systems that they've been in contact with. And then what I do specifically as well, I'm a facilitator, I'm a coach with the Credible Messenger Initiative, and also I do trainings and things of that nature around this particular model, and building up UBT, United Better Thinking, underneath the Credible Messenger model as well.
All of that sounds extremely interesting. But you know what? I noticed that we're using a lot of terminology that sounds very, very important to what you do that I would love to break down for the people at home who are listening who might not understand. So the first thing is, it seems like common knowledge that there is a school-to-prison pipeline, but can we really break it down one more time? Like, what exactly is the school-to-prison pipeline? What does it look like? Whoever wants to answer.
I think the school-to-prison pipeline is really in some sense, is a farce. I think it's a terminology that us adults utilize in order to have a working dialogue or terminology, but really it's the womb to prison pipeline. Statistics show that, it's not just, it doesn't just happen because you're in a particular school setting. It's definitely targeted at, marginalized and disenfranchised communities. And so a lot of those conditions are heaped upon the shoulders of children who aren't even born right now. There's situations and circumstances awaiting them. So what that looks like is there's a high concentration of police presence, aggressive prosecution for particular communities, for particular people. In our county, in our jurisdiction in King County, we noticed through research that people who came into contact with the system due to let's say second degree in possession of a felony firearm, majority of those were all male. They were all male, and 86% of those male were men of color, and out of 86, over 50%, 63 of them actually were black men. But when you look at the population of black folks in King County in the state of Washington, we're probably maybe about 9 or 10% of the county's population. But here we are, we represent over half of the incarceration rate, and so when you look at that, we know that there's a systemic target that is being placed on these communities, on our communities. And so when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, we're actually talking about a system that we're trying to dismantle and overhaul and bring about a transformational process.
Wow. And I heard both Eddie and Will mention that you use the credible messenger model to kind of combat some of the issues that are directed towards the youth that you serve, or all the people that you serve. So what does that look like?
Well, actually, can I jump in and ask specifically what makes a credible messenger?
Good question. So what makes a credible messenger is someone who either has been directly impacted by the system themselves and are now headed towards fixing the problem that they helped create or help pursue, right? But also, in addition to a credible messenger who has been incarcerated, is basically anybody who's been impacted negatively by the system. For example, our last training, my mom was in the training, right? She was negatively impacted also, right? Just by her sons being incarcerated. So she can speak to that level, right? So, and we're not just, with the credible messenger model, it's not just simply concerning the youth, it's their families as well, right? So, so individuals who are trained up on the credible messenger model, we're now transitioning to the phase of family engagement, because as we do know, we can do all the talking and convincing in the world, but as soon as these young men or young women leave our presence and go back home, they're exposed to the same environments that actually caused them to head down the wrong path in the first place.
Yeah, and just in addition to that brilliant response in terms of what a credible messenger is, Eddie spoke on the fact that we provide training. And even though you may have come into contact with the system and you have a desire to do something positive, that does not qualify you to be a credible messenger. Just because you've been in doesn't mean that you're an OG, you're a big homie, then all of a sudden you have some elected position now that you can speak life into these young folks. So what we do is we take them through a specific model, credible messenger model, a specific training. And one of the examples that are provided even in that training is talking about the early inception or onset of hospitals, right? When hospitals were created, the same doctors that were working with the cadavers, which are the dead bodies in the hospital, they actually were also in the maternity ward where the babies were being born. But they realized there was an increase of infant mortality. There was a lot of babies dying. And what they realized through practice, because it is a practice, that what happened was the same doctors who was working on the dead bodies were giving birth to the babies, and they didn't wash their hands, so there was cross-contamination. Wow. And so the same thing is, just because you feel like you're qualified to do this work, this training allows these young folks to wash their hands because they're getting ready to put their hands in the lives of our young folks. So we don't want their ills to kill our babies just because you've been to the joint, just because you've been in the streets. We don't want you to glorize that aspect. So that's what this particular model does. It allows them to wash their hands, because without that, if you don't have that particular training, and one of the things I go around and say, you're not going to be a credible messenger, you'll be a credible mess.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yes,
your boy's got a heat,
good.
Jason. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. And so that applies to three of you guys, right?
Absolutely.
You've all been through this process. Do either of you guys comfortable sharing some of your background before you got into this work?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I'll say I'll just say this. I think it's a testament to say that I work for the same court that sent me to prison in a high-level project management position. And I guess the thing that I'll say about that is I'm going to use everything in my realm of professional spectrum to be able to push the work forward. That's pretty much it. You know, I think there's credible messengers on different levels, but I want these two fellas to be able to share, more about what that looks like.
And I'll go in real quick because since Eddie is right next to me, I have also been negatively impacted by the system. My first contact with the I guess you could say the prison industrial complex or the juvenile system, because it's all a part of that. I was at the age of 9. I came in on assault, something like that, but it progressively morphed into me at the age. By the time I reached 13, 2 weeks after 13, I actually was involved in a homicide, and 6 weeks after that, I was tried as an adult, and I was sentenced to 23 years, 8 months, and 6 days.
At 13 years old.
At 13, I was tried as an adult, and I served 20 years from 1994 to 2014. Wow. So definitely, it's a when Jason was speaking earlier about it being an assignment. This is my assignment. I tell people all the time, this is not an area which one is aspires to, let's say, luxury and being rich, because it doesn't. This is not the path that is paved with those opportunities. I do this out of an obligation, and I tell people all the time. There's many I feel in my rightful respect that I have $1 billion ideas that I'm actually putting on hold because this work is that much more important. So I just let people know, like, what this is not a fallacy. It's not something that's made up. This is something that actually had taken place. So we're trying to do a complete overhaul and shift with this particular system. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll say, first of all, a credible messenger, as it was told to me by the brother, I forgot his name, from New York, who did 24 years in the feds. He said, if you were incarcerated and now you want to come do this credible messenger work, you're not really a credible messenger if you weren't doing this, if you wasn't on this journey before your release, right? And that's a big piece, because it's individuals who get out and, okay, I just want to hop into this work. But there's a whole different element that comes before that. While you in the cocoon, while you in the prison, it has to take that transformational process. But as far as myself, similar situations, as far as, unfortunately, what a lot of young black males, young black and brown males are faced with. Every male in my family has been incarcerated, older than me. And younger than me now, including my little nephew. And I remember wanting to actually be incarcerated, even if it was 10, 15 days. Go to juvenile, right? Everybody's doing it. Come out a little cooler, a little bit more respected. Didn't realize that my very first case that I caught would actually land me in prison for 12 and a half years. At 16, I left school to go commit a crime. To go commit a home invasion, armed robbery. And 17, I went on a run for that crime, and at 18, I was the youngest person at Walla Walla in 2003. Served 12 and a half years off that. Next month, it'll be 3 years of me being released.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys sharing that. And, I mean, to me, it's important, and we talked about this before the show, I think it was important to talk about the work you guys are doing, the responsibility you have, the influence and power you have first, because that's so powerful. But for sharing that, I think is equally important, because I think there's a lot of people who don't even vote because they don't think there's anything that can be done. And that's, to me, voting is the simplest thing we can all do. And I think even on those simple levels, people are so disenfranchised from an ability to make anything change in a way that they want. And I mean, that's just 3 powerful testimonies. Like, that's what people need to understand. That, I don't know. Let me stop talking, but I appreciate that so much, and I think that's crucial for you guys to share that.
I would like to add the fact that I've sat in rooms where people have more degrees than a thermostat, right? And just being honest with you, and being the only one without a degree. I'm talking about at the age of 9 and at the age of the other times I had court appearances, and you have people in there such as judges, attorneys, prosecutors, even a court stenographer. Everybody has a particular degree. And so when people ask us, what do we do, and ask for specific titles, I'm remiss to, it doesn't matter, because degrees don't tell me how good you are. are. It only tells me that you can function in a particular system, but can you really be transformational? It lets me know you could be transactional, but can you be transformational? Can you transform people's lives? Can you transform systems? Can you do these particular aspects, right? A lot of people can't do that. So even when you tell them you have a degree, when young people, they've been in contact with probably more people with degrees than not. When we're talking about systems, we're talking about educators, we're talking about lawyers, we're talking about attorneys. We come into contact with these people all the time, and just being real, they're defunct. They're malnourished. They're deficient in their capacity of being able to sustain life when it comes to individual life and when it comes to systemic life. They're malnourished. And so being a subject matter expert is very important because we can see the nuances. We understand exactly what needs to be done, what needs to be said, how it needs to go about. We need to do the reform and the transformation of these particular systems because you guys, these people, and I'm not trying to create a situation where it's us versus them, but there is a caveat of that system, and then there's other people outside of that system where you guys been in these particular roles. Your roles haven't shifted or changed. Only the people have. The requirements to get a degree, all these things have been, the measures have pretty much been set. Only thing that hasn't changed is how do you get into a real significant relationship with these young folks? How you get into a real significant relationship with the community in order to bring about transformational processes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think it's extremely important, just like you touched on, building relationships with people is the only way to break through to them. I think a lot of people think that you can sit inside a room and you can learn how to talk to people, you can learn how to work with people, you can learn how to figure it out. But if the people aren't interested in what you have to say, and if you truly aren't invested in what you're doing and in the action that has to go into the work, enough to establish a relationship, enough to actually understand the backgrounds of those people and figure out where you fit in so you can be transformational, then the degrees that you have and the knowledge that you have are unimportant, especially if you're not willing to put in actionable work. Like there has to be work, there has to be movement behind what you're doing. And it sounds like all of the things that all three of you have discussed, there's a lot of work that goes into it, more so than just the passion that you clearly have. And I'm curious to know, like, where do you even get the resources to do this type of work? How do you keep a system like this sustained?
That's heavy. I guess but in transition, one of the things that I do want to share is systems are biased too. So when you think about who has those degrees, like we know it's really not us. So I think being a credible messenger is a degree in itself. Just the amount of training and experience you go through in life to get to that point. But sustainment, I think as far as sustainment goes right now, it's not a self-sustaining entity, right? We're trying to grow this out, but in the same sense, a lot of the funding comes from King County. I'll let Will share about where the funding for his program comes from, but that's also a King County Stopping the School to Prison Pipeline grant in King County, Washington. The funding that I have for, KCCMI, which we operate as a consortium, kind of a hub where we share resources, training, professional development, and just all overarching coordination. The funds for that comes from our general fund in juvenile court. So I'm a project manager for juvenile court in King County. So I'm over our mentorship fund. So I get to shift $220,000 into this program. I got a match grant through the Department of Community and Human Services in DCHS in King County. That was another $134,000. But other than that, it's just a bunch of little writing for grants. I wrote a grant for $75,000 for us to get an evaluation so we can try to legitimize the work that we do so people don't just say like, hey, them cats are doing that thing. No, we're doing something that's proven, right? It's evidence-based. It's proven. We're going to share an evaluation so people can legitimize our work. And then just other little grants like through trial court improvement for innovation funds and, just different stipends, things like that. So right now it's piecemealing things together. So if there's any funders out there listening, we'd love to, wrap and have that conversation around how we can support Credible Messenger on the West Coast. You got the Pinkerton Foundation, you got the Public Welfare Foundation that are funding Credible Messenger on the East Coast. But right now there's no foundations that are really digging into this criminal justice reform. Like when you think about this reinvestment, it's justice reinvestment. We're investing in community leaders who never had opportunities with college level training, professional development, and then they get to go in and support young people who are disproportionately kicked out of schools, disproportionately jammed into systems, and put on that path to prison. And I think if any politician or a lawmaker or person who sits in a position of power could think about this, like this is one of those things that you definitely get a return on your investment. So
I definitely hear that. And as an educator, I see it firsthand, like even on an elementary level. So I currently am a second grade teacher. I've also been a third grade teacher. And a lot of the statistics out there are that they look at third graders specifically and the way that they're performing on standardized tests to determine who's going to go to prison and who isn't, who's going to. Yeah, that's exactly like the foundation of the pipeline. You wouldn't think that they're looking at children who are 8 and 9 years old, but that's exactly where it starts on an institutional level. But like Will mentioned earlier, it's really a womb to prison pipeline because these statistics start stacking up against these kids before they're even born, before they're even conceived or thought of, honestly, just because of the demographics that they come from, because of their social economic status or of their parents. Like all of these things factor into the system in ways that a lot of people couldn't imagine because they have the privilege of not having to imagine it. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So it's really interesting to hear that it's not only educators who are thinking about these types of systems, but that there are people in the world who actually come from the prison and go back to the school to take the kids out and to help benefit them. And that's something that's really powerful for me to sit in a room with you all who came out where you could have been focused on yourself and getting your own life on track and said, I'm going to reach back into the community to help work with these children and to do the research to put together an entire organization where I can get other people on board to help not only kids, but you say all the way up to age what?
24. All
the way up to age 24. These people are impacted in a way that it's just beautiful to watch it develop and unfold right here and hear you all talk about it before my eyes.
Well, yeah, this is necessary stuff. Like Willard said, it's an obligation, number one. And number two, we met with Dr. Edwin Nichols, who's a world-renowned psychologist. And I always bring him up in terms of the work that we do with the youth, because one thing he did say was that we must politicize our youth as early as possible. So what we're doing within our groups, and we started off 2 or 3 groups within King County, and now we've expanded to about 6 or 7. And what's included in our curriculum, we're talking about the negative impacts that social media is having, how cell phones have become an addiction to this generation. We're talking about the trauma that gets swept up under the rug, and before you become 40 and 50 and 60 years old, not dealing with the things that have happened 20 and 30 and 40 years ago, right? How do you deal with that right now in present time, right? How to address those things. We're talking about the importance of forgiveness. Like Maya Angelou said, one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned was the importance of forgiveness, right? So we're bringing up these conversations with these youth, and in order to, and allowing them to create space to speak their truth, because in schools they're not able to do so, and home they're not able to do so. But in the Credible Messenger groups, they're able to do so in an effective way, in a healthy way, and are able to learn from one another. So we're just presenting the concepts, and they're actually learning from themselves, from each other, and definitely from us. But as we know, there's greatness already within them. It just takes somebody to put the mirror to their face and allow them to see it for themselves.
That's actually a perfect segue to the next question that I was going to ask, because earlier, Jason, you mentioned that you use cognitive behavioral therapy to help the kids or to help the people that you serve. And when you said put a mirror up to their face, I think that's a great way to ask. In what ways do you use cognitive behavioral therapy to support the children's transition?
Yeah. So everything is kind of scaled through curriculum, right? So what we do is we build everything on the pillars of the Covenant of Peace. So when you think of those pillars, it ties into the 6 domains of positive youth justice. But everything is rooted just in that attaching, belonging, learning, and doing. And every lesson is building on the lesson before that. So I think in utilizing that, that's the foundation to every lesson plan that we create. So it's essentially the foundation of everything that we're doing. You know, how do we use it? We consistently train people. We have 2 professional development meetings per month that we, are consistent in going back and touching on those specific pieces of our training, and coaching people through the specific curriculum development. Yeah.
So how can people like me and Steve and other average Joes who are listening to this podcast get involved in this type of work? How can we be beneficial?
how can you be beneficial and how can you get involved? There's many different ways in getting involved. I think that just being real, connect with some of the credible messengers that may be in your particular town. Here in DC, they're doing some wonderful, outstanding things underneath this particular model. Connect with those, so you don't have to feel like you're trying to reinvent the wheel. Oftentimes, everybody comes to the table with these grandiose ideas. Excuse me, with these grandiose ideas of what they want to do and how they want to do it. But a lot of times, there's people already doing that work. And they might be able to help you with the shortcut process because they've already done the work for 15 or 20 years plus. So get involved with people who are just as involved, looking at shared equity. There's a lot of people talking about, are you sipping the equity, right? Are you really doing that? So let's talk about real shared equity. We're talking about intersectionality. We're talking about, marginalized communities. People have been disenfranchised, putting the standards at a shared equitable value, and just making these things happen. Also, just being open-minded to the process, because a lot of people say, well, I don't want my young person to be, mentored by someone who's probably been incarcerated, who's probably had, some abrasive upbringing and things of that nature. But the reality is, when we're talking about wounded warriors who are coming from Vietnam, or not Vietnam, but coming from overseas, from fighting in the war, part of their transitional process is to connect with someone who's already been there, right? And this is evidence-based practice. It's the same thing for people who
example of CBT, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, talk therapy. Coming out of drug addiction, they'll send somebody to NA or AA, and everybody in there has been exposed to that, and they know how to walk them through that process. But we're the only population that people try to make that process taboo towards, and we're the ones. My uncle told me a long time ago. He said winners end up with scars and losers end up with funerals. But he also said that we're wounded. We're the wounded healers. So we have the medicine because we know that it works, right? And so if you want your young folks and you want communities to be healed through a process, you guys sometimes come to the subject matter experts. I'm just going to be real. I'm going to be real about it. You're a female, right? I'm assuming you're a woman. And when it comes to talking about women issues, do you want me to be up there speaking on those women issues as a subject matter expert?
No.
Absolutely not. Right. And so it's the same thing when it comes to brown and black boys. For some reason, there's a commission for everyone out there. We're talking about gender equity. Usually there's a woman who's leading that particular that office. If we're talking about, gay rights or whatever, somebody who comes from that particular community. But all of a sudden, when we're talking about black and brown boys, everybody want to be at the table, except for then what they want to exclude the black and brown men from being able to be who are the subject matter experts over this particular process. So just like you want a woman to lead that gender equity issue, and you want somebody who might comes from the LGBT aspect to lead that particular issue. When it comes to black and brown men, you have to allow us to lead. We do need your help, but you have to allow us to lead, and that's what's going to help people to get involved into this process effectively.
Right.
Yeah. That's a lot. I'm at a loss. I was just taking this all in.
Yeah, same.
Jay Callie, I appreciate you really taking on a lot of this facilitation on your shoulders. This has been an amazing conversation, and I don't have anything else to add, so I want to thank you guys for doing this. And Eddie Howard, thank you. Willie J, thank you. Jason Clark, thank you. Do you guys have any last parting shots? I want
to share one thing before you let these brothers share. Our system statistics share that 1 in 3 black men are going to come in contact with the prison industrial complex at some point in their life. 1 in 6 Latino men. Now, when you go into your professional buildings, if you don't look around the staff and see some of those black or Latino men on the staff, that's an issue. So I think that the system industrial complex is that we don't hire people who've come into contact with the system, but we note that our systems operate out of a disproportionate effect on young people who are coming into contact with the system, which means those men have come into contact with the system, and then they're blocked from jobs because we have these barriers that are focused on background checks. Right. So I don't know. I just feel like at some point in time, like we have to start paying attention to the fact that we have to hire more people who've come into contact with the system. A felony shouldn't be a life sentence, and it doesn't mean that you're a horrible person. Everybody makes mistakes. Look at Brett Kavanaugh.
Ooh.
I just wanted to share that this is the time. This is the absolute time to make some change. As we know, the system has been working the way it's been working and getting the same results. In fact, it's been getting worse in our communities. So that's a traditional approach. Now we're taking a non-traditional approach, and it's of the utmost importance that we allow this credible messenger model to continue to flourish, because we've been seeing great results from that. I think everybody gets caught up in these positions in the system and what we need to, the business aspect of it, because we know this is big business, right? Locking us up. But I think that when we talk about why we're doing this, and keeping in mind that this is all about the youth.
Right.
I think if we keep that in mind, then we're going to allow credible messengers who's been personally and professionally developed properly from other individuals who have the tools to do so through our trainings and so on and so forth. Then we'll be better off by keeping the keeping in mind who we're doing it for and why we are doing it. I just shared a video on Facebook a couple of days ago of a mom recording the conversation that she had with her son, who's 7, 8 years old. She said, "Did your dad tell you that he's getting ready to go away for a while?" And he said, "No." He said, "For what? Parking tickets?" He's like, "No, he did some grown people stuff, and he'll be gone for about 3 years." The little boy just broke down crying.
Aww.
7, 8 years old. His dad gonna be gone for 3 years, right? So who's going to come in place and actually teach this little boy on how to become a man? Dad's gonna be gone for 3 years, right? Mom's not gonna be able to do it. Her response was, "Wipe your tears, be a big boy." No, that's not the right response, and she's only giving what she got, right? So we need credible messengers in these positions to be able to step up where others have left off, right? And that's the importance of what we're doing and why we're doing it, to really disrupt what's been going on. The last piece I'll share is we just went to the Frederick Douglass house yesterday. That was a beautiful experience. And in the video that we watched, 15-minute video before we actually walked up to his house, at the very end of that 15-minute video, in Frederick Douglass' last years, there was a young man that was waiting on his porch when he walked up to his house. And he said, "What can I do? There's still a lot of stuff going on. What can I do?" He thought for a second, and he said, "Agitate. Agitate." And he said it about 5 times, agitate. And I think the credible messenger model, that's exactly what we're doing. We're agitating a system that's been in place for a long time that's still negatively affecting our people.
Okay. Eddie Howard, thank you.
Absolutely.
Willie J.
Yeah, in my closing words, I would just like to say that one of the things I've learned on this journey is that budgets should follow values and priorities. There's a lot of budgets that are created that do not follow values and they do not follow priorities. And then also we get into this particular mindset in terms of which is socially acceptable, and so we push these notions onto our young folks and even onto society and even onto ourselves, such as you should go to this particular institute for higher learning. You need to go to the University of Ohio, go to the University of DC, go to the University of Washington to go get this X, Y, and Z component that you are missing out of your lives. And one of the things that we're very cognizant about, we're very vigilant about is making sure that you don't mistake allowing everything around you to learn how to master you except for yourself. There's people who learn how to master you on nutritional value and say this will work for you, so get a gym membership and come over here and work out. There's people who learn how to master some people, rather you might do X, Y, and Z. One thing we push is to go to the University of You. Learn who you are so you can be most effective in who you are as a person. And so when you really get down to that particular aspect, that's when we allow the budgets to match up with the priorities and match up with the values and make sure that the systems that are created based upon that are going to have a true impact on uplifting our community in the way that we need to be. Thank you. And also, you can hit me on Facebook, Willard Jimerson Jr. That's WILLARD JIMERSON Jr. I'm also on Instagram, Inspirational Will, and also on Snapchat, Willie Attle, WILLIEATTLE, and looking forward to connecting with everybody.
And one thing, you can link us. You can find us all on King County Credible Messengers Facebook, King County Credible Messengers Initiative.
Okay, and we'll when we post links to the episode on our social media, we'll have some of that information as well to make sure people can follow up with you guys. And if anybody listening doesn't find or see that information, reach out to us through social media, and we'll make sure to connect you. So again, guys, thank you. This was amazing. So that was Jason Clark of King County Superior Court in Washington State. That was Willard Jimerson, who's a program manager at Urban League Metropolitan of Seattle, and Eddie Howard, life and job skills instructor with Urban League and president of Progress Pushers. We want to thank everybody for listening. That was some amazing stuff that we just heard.
Yes.
I'm Steve Discourse.
You already know it's Jay Callie. Hey, what's the deal?